Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. It's Chad Hyams and Bob Stewart. Bob, how are you doing today?
Ooh, Chad, I'm good, bud. How are you?
Bob, I am fantastic because it's a choice, and it's a choice I always make.
Ooh, I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
That's what I could be miserable. I could be fantastic. I could be okay. I'm going to be fantastic, Bob. It's the choice, and as soon as I make it, I feel that way.
So, you know something? I'm assuming. I think we talked about this on one of the episodes. Like that idea of like, what is it? Those first 4 or 5 seconds is emotion, and then after that we get to decide. Like it's then our feelings come into play, but if they're decisions that we're making. So like even if something happened to you today, Chad, that made you miserable, like you then got to decide to not be that. So I'm glad you made that decision, my friend.
6 seconds is an emotion. We've talked about it. You're absolutely right. And Bob, I had a moment today. Right, our landscapers were here, and they take care of the yard. And when we put the plan together and we had them build it, I love those, and I just call them Dr. Seuss trees, but those spirally trees. You know the ones that the small evergreens that are spiraling. Yeah. Okay, so we had them put them in. The gentleman who ran the landscaping company said they're really tricky to trim, because you want to keep that shape of the swirl without overcutting. He said, so when they're at trim size, let me know. I'll come out personally and take care of these. And last week, he sent his crew out, or a few weeks ago, his crew was here, and I said, I think these trees are getting close to being trimmed. Will you ask the owner to come out and take care of them? And last week, the guy did it himself. He said, they told me to just give it a trim. And he went and he zipped it up and he killed it. I mean, killed the tree. It's a stick now. It's like Charlie Brown Christmas. Right? So last week I was disappointed, and I said to him, no, don't do another one, because we had 2. He was going to go do the other one. I said, don't do it. Right? Obviously, this one, it did not go so well. Right? And I was very disappointed, and I made him feel badly. And I went out 2 minutes later. I came in the house and I said to Nita, I think I hurt his feelings. People should toughen up in this world. But I went out and I apologized. I said, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, right? The owner told me he'd take care of these. He should have, not you. Well, today they came and they planted a new tree for us, because I said, you better come give me another one. And they fired us. They said, we're done servicing you. And they fired us, which is fine. We were working to the end of our contract with them. So for a minute, there was man, someone fired me, right? That feels badly. And it took about 7 seconds before I went, yeah, I'm not choosing that. I'm happy. We were going to get rid of them. They just made it a lot easier. I had to give them 1 month notice. They gave me 1 hour notice. Okay, so be it. Have a nice day. Folks, it means choose your contractors and service providers well. And when you got a good one, keep them.
Now, and when you're doing that, you might have to negotiate, Chad.
Oh, Bob, you always give away what we're talking about before we get to the
fun. You have to do some negotiation coming up when you're trying to pick your next landscaper. And
correct.
So in that stead,
this class is for me today. This episode is directly for me.
Today's Chad's episode.
All right. So we're going to talk about the top 9. You did a little research this morning when we said, let's talk about this conversation, which happened before I had to go through all this. But you said, let's go through this. And we found what we believe are 9 really powerful tips for successful negotiations.
Yeah. And look, I'm not the best negotiator. In fact, I would prefer to never do it. In fact, my wife is the negotiator in our family. She's just a really top-notch sales professional, and she is a master at negotiations with our children, with me.
Are you a pushover? Is that why that you usually lose, or do you just get too emotional? Why do you want to avoid being the negotiator?
I'm a pushover. Yeah, okay. I'm a pushover.
Everybody asked Bob for a raise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm some ways it comes from an abundance mindset. I'm just I don't know, here, sure, take it. I'm sure there's more. And I don't know. Honestly, if I had to get really down to the core of it, I'll tell you, it comes from being raised by somebody that was a really aggressive negotiator.
Okay.
Right. And so I just always watched my mother, like,
Yes. We all figured
like,
you were talking about mom.
just like dominate negotiations. And it made me think like, oh, wow, I don't want to dominate things like that. So I'm just a little bit, I don't know. It gives me anxiety, to be quite honest.
Okay. Now we know more things about Bob, folks. And let's talk negotiation. Bob, let's help me get ready for my next negotiation with the next landscaper. I think I see Nita out my window actually taking somebody into the backyard to get a quote. And let's help you get over some of that anxiety. Here's the thing, Bob. When it comes to negotiating, step one is always going to be step one. It's always going to be step one. I'm not saying these are in order, yet this one is absolutely in order. Doesn't matter how many sites we looked at, how much research we did. You have to ask for what you want, and you can't be afraid to do so.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a big one. Some of the stuff we were looking at was talking about just this idea that like certain people have a negotiator mindset, Chad. Like from the outset, they understand. I would say Ben is one of these. My wife is one of these. My mother is one of these, right? They just understand that everything's up for negotiation.
Everything. I mean, literally everything can be up for negotiation. Bob, that hat is, I could probably get you to give me the hat in part of the negotiation. That might be the deal breaker.
Yeah. Yeah. So just everything's up for negotiation. And once you adopt that mindset, which again, I don't think many people move through life with that mindset, right? But once you adopt that mindset, then you're already like ahead of the game, right? Because you're once you have that mindset, then you're much more likely or willing to ask for the thing you want because you realize it's even something you can do.
Right. Absolutely. Right. You don't have to be pushy to do it.
Yeah.
Right. When it comes to negotiation. Yet here's the thing we understand about negotiations. There's always one extreme and the other extreme. There's your extreme, Bob. There's my extreme as you and I would negotiate. And there's always going to be we're going to meet somewhere in the middle. Now, it might be a little more to your side or a little more to my side, whatever it comes down to. Yet here's the thing. You might as well ask for what you want, because some of those things are coming off the list anyway, right? And you know you're not going to get them. So if you can ask for everything, now you're in a position to say, I'm willing to give that one up. Like, Bob, you can keep your hat.
Yeah. Look, as a part of that, I think is this idea, and like, again, I think back to Ben, I think back to my wife's really good at this, is the idea of like, the willingness to challenge the assertions that other person is making, Chad.
Yes.
Right? And this could even be a 1A or something, but it's that idea that like, just because they told you that's the deal, like you don't have to take that at face value, right? You could push back on that. You could ask probing questions. Ben's a master at that. Like you tell him something, if he's not quite it doesn't quite square up in his head, he's more than willing to ask you a series of clarifying questions around that thing, kind of challenging that assumption that you've put forward.
Yes, you're absolutely right for it. Right. Make sure that you are asking for what you want, because if you're not clear on what you want, the negotiation doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to end up anywhere near where you wanted because you didn't ask for what you wanted clearly. You want a raise? Don't go in there and start asking for the raise. You're looking to purchase a vehicle, make the negotiation very clear so people know what it is you want. Don't be afraid to ask. All right. Bob, I think the next one that you have on the list, it's almost logical. Again, these aren't steps. Yet it's almost logical that if we're going to start and we're going to ask for what we want, that we've got to do this next thing you put on the list, which is
shut up and listen. Like, I think that like if you just took a random person off the street that had zero life experience, right, and said, hey, like convince this other person, like you're in a negotiation, convince them to take your deal, right? Most people are going to spend 90% of the time talking, right, Chad? Like, okay, here's why I think, here's why you should listen to me, here's why my idea is the best idea. But the reality is most great negotiators are only speaking somewhere in the neighborhood of 30% of the time, Chad.
Yes.
Like, Ben is a master at this. Like, you go in trying to get something out of him, and he doesn't spend much time talking. There's a lot more listening, a lot of his short little probing questions that end up with you giving up a lot of the information. I mean, ultimately, great negotiators understand the more data points they have, the more information that you're willing to give up to them, the more leverage they have in their negotiation. And so, great questions, and then literally just shutting up and listening. And we talk about this in a variety of different ways, but when you ask somebody a question, again, Ben's a master. My wife is like really, really good at this. You just ask a question and then just shut up. Right?
He does a really good job of it. You see, Bob, there's two people in every conversation. I know I've mentioned this on podcast episodes in the past. Our audience might know this. They might have not heard me say it before. There's two people in every conversation. There's the dominator and there's the controller, right? The dominator is the one who talks the most. The controller is the one who actually controls the conversation. So you might go in to talk with Ben, using him again in our example, and anybody who's had a negotiation with Ben, and that doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be just getting him to come into the podcast studio to record with us, right? That you can be sure he's going to become the controller of that. He's going to talk a lot less than the dominator. The dominator talks. Now, here's the thing to remember. The most pleasant sound to every human on earth is the sound of their own voice. So the more you shut up and listen, the more they're talking. The more they're talking, the more they like you, because they keep hearing their own voice. So there's something about you that they start to like.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, there's little tactics, and we've brought him up before, but like Ben, he always like, unless it was, us trying to get him to come into the podcast room, but you would never find him in a negotiation without a pen and a piece of paper, generally a Sharpie, where he's like using that thing to control, because he's taking notes.
Yes.
Right. It slows you down to the point where you're really having to listen, because you're actually writing down some of the things that they're saying, not word for word by any means. Right. But that just taking notes can be a really great kind of crutch to help you listen more effectively.
Absolutely. That's a great one. And it's one he uses as a really, really powerful tool. Bob, the shut up and listen is a good one. Yet I'm also going to lead that into the next thing that we have here, which is, being prepared, doing your homework.
Yeah. Showing up with some data points that are going to help you get to your end.
I mean, I give you credit. You do a great job of this. People might not realize it. When we do a podcast episode, or you're doing some sort of training with a group directly, you do a little research. You'll go and you'll Facebook stalk them, or you'll Google them and see what comes up. You'll even wear a hat specific to them, right, to help them feel at ease, comfortable, to connect with you. So the thing is, are you doing your homework, right? And do you know what they want out of this, so that you can be in a position of knowing who you're negotiating with?
I'll share this story. I think Ben's shared this on the podcast before. I won't use the names but so there was a company that a couple of years ago we were in talks to purchase.
Right.
And they also had another offer or two on the table. And so Ben, in the shut up and listen phase, had collected from them who basically we were competing against. And so one of the companies we were competing against to buy this company had a better offer on the table than we had. And so Ben went and did his homework on that competitor, right? And found out that one of the things that competitor has done in the past when they would buy a company is they would essentially go in and lay off the majority of that workforce. And one of the things that was important to this person whose company we were attempting to purchase was that his workforce was going to be safe and continue to have jobs. And so because Ben went and did that homework, when he went in and sat down for the negotiations, he made sure to show them, hey, by the way, I know you have a better offer on the table, but did you also know that company is highly likely to come in and fire 75% of your workforce? That's just the way they do things. Here's the proof. They've done it the last 3 acquisitions they've made. And so, I mean, essentially, we were able to get that company for lower than they had an offer on the table because Ben had gone out and done his homework. So, I mean, I think that as much as you can gather, the better off it'll put you in position.
Yeah, and we have a lot of people, obviously, in the real estate industry in our worlds, Bob. So a lot of the people listening to this podcast might be real estate connected in one way or another, right? And it's doing the homework, looking at what the property, it doesn't mean because they bought it for something that they shouldn't be able to get this much on the sale. That depends on what the market, yet doing the homework and saying, well, what did the neighbor get recently? Because they just sold. It's doing the homework as best you can of who are these people, right? Do I know why they're going? Are they needing the money, or are they just wanting a change, or are they needing to grow or shrink, or is there something, right? If you can do some of the homework and find out, it strengthens your negotiation position.
When we went,
folks, do it.
When we went into the last time we purchased a car, we don't buy new cars, we buy used cars. But the last time we went in, we knew that the model of car we were trying to buy, we knew every single other one, like in a 3-county radius that was for sale, Chad, how much it was for sale for, how many miles. So when we went in there to ultimately purchase the one we were going to purchase, we knew exactly what our competition was. We knew what we could walk away from and go get from somewhere else. And that's credit to my wife, because she's professionally trained at this stuff. And so she just came in very prepared from having done her homework.
And that leads us to the next one, Bob, the fourth one that you put on our list. You just segued us right into, which is
always be willing to walk.
Yeah, right. And you just said it. You knew you could walk away. When I bought my last truck, I had gone to 2 different dealerships, and I was willing to walk away from both of them, much less walk away from one when he was like, I won't budge on the price. I was like, look, the guy across town, he's giving it to me for $1,000 less. And that doesn't sound like much, but that's what it is. And the guy said, no. I said, okay, I'm walking. Right. And you're waiting for them to do the don't go. Right. I just walked right out the door.
I mean, you always have to look, if you're in a position where there's literally no option B, like you're going to struggle to negotiate there. Right. Because
you've already lost.
You already in the back of your head have this thing that's like, I got to get a deal done here. Like, there's no other options. So, look, in a perfect world, you're stepping into negotiations with another option, which gives you then the ability to potentially walk away.
Yeah, we were just looking at a property, Nita and I, to purchase a property, and it was almost perfect, right? Location is what we wanted. Price was what we were willing to pay, right? It was completely renovated. It was in good condition. It was going to give us exactly what we wanted. Yet the whole time we were always willing to say and no, right? So when they came back with a counter offer, we gave them one last shot. We said, here it is. And we went back to them. We said, this is our offer again, basically, because we're willing to say it's this or we can walk away.
That's how we got the lake house.
Right.
We ended up at this offer, let's call it 450. And they had another offer above ours. And they actually came back to us and said, hey, we've got another offer. It's up here at 460. They didn't tell us what it was, but we kind of had an idea. And my wife just said, no, like that's our offer. We're okay walking away. And we had to kind of get to the position where we were okay losing it over that, but we were. And I'll be darned if that didn't, it ended up the deal. They went with us, and there's a variety of other reasons, doing the homework and some other things. Right. But an ability to walk away. That's
okay. So folks, look, Bob had said, right, if you don't have a plan B, you're pretty much screwed going into any negotiation. Let's be clear. Plan B is walk away. Right. and if you don't have that, you can have plan C and plan D and plan E and all those other plans. Yet plan B immediately should be, we'll walk away and just say no. And if that's not an option, don't even get into the negotiation in the first place, because that means you have to make something work, right? If you can't have we'll just say no and walk away, you're going to end up losing in those negotiations one way or another.
Yeah. I love this next one. Don't be in a hurry, Chad. I think just culturally in the U.S., we are, just a little bit faster paced, and but there is an idea that the person that has the most flexibility with time, it has an advantage in these situations.
Yes.
We recently here in our world closed on a company, and Ben had tried to buy them 3 years ago. And they wanted a certain amount, and he just first he had some options, and one of them being don't do anything, right? And so as he stepped away, but like in his head, they might have thought that like we've lost that buyer, but in his head, he was like, no, I could buy this again later potentially, right? Or maybe there's some other options of things I could buy. 3 years later, we end up buying that company for about 25% of what they wanted for it 3 years ago. And, he'd done enough homework. He kind of understood where they were trending towards and just said, you know what, we can actually wait on this and step back. And because he wasn't in a hurry, we end up getting a company, a couple of years later for 25% of what they had wanted 3 years prior.
I will tell anybody listening, if Ben Kinney is on the other side of the negotiation table, understand that time is always going to be one of the weapons he is willing to use. He very rarely finds himself in a position where it's, I got to have this now. Or that it's a race, so it becomes a multiple offer type situation. I mean, let's look at real estate, because everybody out there, whether you're in the industry or not, you understand this. When the market was moving quickly, sellers were getting ridiculous amounts of money, even more than they were asking, because buyers weren't willing to walk away. And then they ended up not having the time. They weren't willing there. The sellers had all that power that buyers were like, not only will I pay $400 for something worth $350, I'll pay $425 for it, right? And that's what happens to the market when supply and demand games start to play. It happens in every area. Real estate's just the one that then makes the headlines that we see. Folks, you've got to slow down. It is amazing. My eyes have been so open to this, Bob, since our trip to Italy, because everything was so different in Italy. They were so willing to just say, no, we'll wait, right? We put an offer on a property out there even. We said, hey, maybe this will be an interesting investment to have, or an Airbnb over there or something. And we put our offer and the people were like, well, we're going to give it 3 weeks, see if we get some other offers. We're not in a rush. And we were like, every day we were chomping and we were sitting over here saying, okay, go offer him more. Okay, go offer him a little more. Go offer him a little more. And our agent was like, no, I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to protect you. They're just playing the game. They have more time than you. Wait till they get to a point where they're like, we need this sold. Then they'll come down to where you wanted, sort of thing. And yeah, in America, it's always about instant gratification. It's amazing outside of this country how willing to slow down everybody really is, which makes a huge difference in negotiations, Bob.
Yeah. All right. Number 6, focus on the other side's wants and needs.
Yes.
Not your own. My wife always calls them the pain points.
Absolutely.
She is trained in sniffing out what that pain point is on the other side and then kind of pushing on it a little bit, Chad, right? Yep. I think about like our sales team that sells one of our software products. There's a defined set of questions that we make them ask every prospect, but it is really designed to figure out what are this person's pain points, right? Because essentially, you're selling a software, it's a negotiation. Are they going to buy it or not? And how much are they going to pay for a setup fee and these different things, right? But the more you understand what that person's pain points are, the more that you can, put your solution towards those pain points.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we know our pain points.
Yeah.
Right. And you've got to protect your pain points because the one who controls there, again, the one who knows the other person's pain points knows where to push to get okay, I give. Right. So it's, how can you figure that out? This is why. And in real estate, I remember when you would have buyers come to look at a house, you would always tell the sellers, go away. Right? Because all that's going to happen is they're going to learn something we don't want them to know in negotiations. Like, yeah, we want to move closer to the grandkids or something. Okay, we got a pain point, right? Or, oh, we can't make next month's mortgage payment. We got to sell, right? We know the pain point. Absolutely. Doing that homework, Bob, will really help you figure out what the pain point is now as we're going through
as will talking less and listening more, right? Asking probing questions. A lot of these things obviously are, commingled or kind of one leads into the other.
Sure does. And then almost on the flip side of it, like this would be what number are we at? 6. So this would be almost 6B, but you kind of have it on 7 on your list. And that's going to be show the other person how you're going to satisfy their needs, right? So once I know their pain point, now how can I almost show it and say, hey, I know you needed this. I'm going to make that happen for you. Oh, we know you needed to wait on clothes. Okay, I'm going to make that happen for you. Oh, we know you needed a new car. Okay, I'm going to make that happen for you. I know you came in here and your car was totaled in an accident, so you need a car. Let me show you how I'm going to meet your needs and satisfy you, because now you're more likely to agree to what I'm attempting to sell you.
Yeah, I love you use the word satisfy. Like, in most negotiations, unless you're getting totally steamrolled, like not everybody's going to get everything they're demanding in that negotiation, but there's probably something, less than they're demanding that they would be satisfied by.
Yep, absolutely. We'll all, if we're doing it right, as we said earlier, we're going to go in and ask for what we want, right? And we're going to do our best to put it all on the table. And we know we're never going to get it all. Now, I guess there could be the time where it works out that way. Yet, wow, that other person was really in a painful, desperate situation.
Yeah.
Odds are that's not most negotiations. We have to give and take. So here it comes. How do I show them how I'm giving so that they take less?
There would probably like to maybe go hand in hand with that. And maybe this should have been up a little bit higher, but it's like, you're asking for what you want, but I think you also know what you're willing to accept.
Yes.
Right. And that what you're willing to accept line is probably where you end up having a willingness to walk away. Right. It's like, okay, I want all this. I'm willing to accept this, but man, if it goes below that, I'm willing to walk. Right. But so probably having a clear understanding, not just of what I'm asking for, but like, what am I actually willing to accept as well is super important.
Yeah. Now, folks, we're talking about negotiations, and most people probably triggered negotiations with business deals or contracts or things like that. Bob, you negotiate with your boys all the time, or as you said, your wife negotiates with your boys.
No, I'm willing to negotiate with my kids. Yeah. That one doesn't give me the same anxiety.
I don't want to go to bed yet, right? I don't want to this. And you shared a story on one of our episodes about one of your boys didn't want to go to sleep because the next day was camp and he was really nervous about going to camp. So he figured if he just stayed up, tomorrow would really never come and he wouldn't have to go. And you were able to have that negotiation with him basically that said, wouldn't you prefer to go into it well rested? You showed him what his needs were and how they would be met if he would just go to sleep right now, which is what you wanted in the ultimate outcome.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Okay. Problem is most kids are better than most grownups, and that's why they get you to read the book again. Number 8, as we go through our 9 steps here, was don't give anything away without getting something. Tell me more about that, Bob.
Well, I mean, if you're making unilateral concessions, like that's weakening your position.
Right.
Right. Like if I'm out there giving something away without getting something back, eventually I'm going to get to the point where most of the things I wanted didn't happen. And I've given up a bunch of stuff. Right. So
make them work for it is what he's saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you want me to take that off the table, okay, fine. What are you going to put on the table? Right.
Yeah. Think about, folks, we hear about all these athletes with their negotiations or celebrities with their negotiations or whatever it is. And it always ends up right when one of the big leagues is having the NFL is having a labor agreement. It's like, okay, the players want better concussion protocol testing and safety. And then the owners say, okay, we want one more game then every year so that we can make more money off that to be able to pay for all this stuff that you're going to want to protect your heads because you've determined that these are dangerous, right? And that's why we have one more game in the NFL season now, right? That was part of the last collective bargaining negotiation where it was players versus owners to make it all work. You got to give and you got to get, and don't give without getting.
If you're giving something up, Chad, without getting anything back, that especially if it's somebody that you're constantly negotiating with, your children, for example, right? They get accustomed, then maybe even feel entitled to your concessions without giving anything back up if you're constantly doing that, right? You start to set like a standard that I know if I just dig in here with dad, he's going to give it up and I'm not going to have to give anything up. right? So you can actually train somebody on the other side that you're willing to do that if you're constantly willing to do it.
It's a great point, Bob. And folks, when we say if you're giving something up, you don't have to get something, it doesn't literally mean you have to get them to add something new. Maybe you have to get them to give something up they wanted, right? So now, okay, I will give up the 10 o'clock bedtime or whatever. You have to give up the fact that you get candy after 8 o'clock or whatever, right? In that kid's discussion. All right, Bob, let me recap because I love recapping. All right. Number one, we said, ask for what you want. Second, we then said, shut up and listen. Third, we said, do some research, your homework. I don't like that word homework. School wasn't a fun place for me. Okay. Always have the plan B, which is walk away. It's always got to be an option. Don't rush. Don't be in a hurry, Americans. Slow down a little bit. Focus on the pain points of the other people, not yours. Show them how you're going to satisfy their needs. Get something if you have to give something. And Bob, the last thing that you put on this list when you put it together for us?
It's not personal, Chad. Don't take it personal.
God, that is so hard to do, right? And I watch, again, I'll do it in real estate. I watch Nita. When someone makes an offer that's lower or especially when it comes to a house that she's done the work on, she's decorated, she's made beautiful for us. She takes it very personally, right? No, it's worth that because I've done this and I've done that. And it's when we become attached to something, it becomes very personal and it's very difficult to get into a negotiation. You've got to make sure going into any negotiation, you take emotion out of it because that's going to be the downfall.
Look, easier said than done. Don't get us wrong, right? But at the same time, probably, very few, you very rarely get what you want if you've lost your cool, Yeah.
Once you blow your top, you've lost the negotiation and you're either going to walk away, which was plan B, yet not get what you wanted, which was getting
plan
this
A.
thing or whatever.
Yeah, that was the A plan, was to get what you wanted.
Or you're getting run over with plan C and you're getting what you want, but you gave away everything to get it because you lost your position. You're right, Bob. It is one of the hardest ones. We saved it for last. It probably could have been first because it's so powerful. If you can't separate them being like personally and emotionally, you're going to come into it because emotion is the opposite of logic and logic is the opposite of emotion. And when someone gets emotional, they're no longer logical. And when it comes to negotiations, you got to be logical.
Love it.
Bob,
Love it.
Listening to the Win, Make, Give podcast, it's a logical thing for people to be doing, right? Can it get emotional? Yes. I've seen you cry on an episode, right? I know some of our audience has had it, yet overall, it's a logical thing to do. So share this with somebody you're negotiating, not against. We don't want them to have the weapons. Someone you're negotiating for. Let them say, look, remember these things. Share the episode with someone. Folks, come into our Facebook group, Win, Make, Give, where we discuss these things after the fact. We look forward to continuing the conversation, as always. And until our next episode, do good.